Welcome to The Explainer. So today, we're going to try and unlock a puzzle, something that's right at the heart of India's criminal justice system. It's this kind of hidden mechanism that lets the courts handle cases that suddenly get way more complicated than anyone expected.
All right, so here's what we're going to cover. First, we'll tackle a bit of a legal puzzle. Then we'll look at the normal journey a case takes. After that, we'll get into two really important procedures, committing a case and submitting a case. And finally, we'll tie it all together with what are called the three judicial competencies.
Okay, so let's start with something that honestly feels like a contradiction in the law. It's a real head-scratcher if you're just reading the legal code for the first time.
So this is the big question, right? At first glance, it just seems redundant. Why say it twice? But here's the thing, it's not a mistake. It's actually the key to a really flexible and frankly powerful justice system, and we're going to figure out exactly why.
But before we can really crack that puzzle, we've got to understand how a criminal case normally works. You can think of it as the standard roadmap, from the moment a crime is reported to when a decision is finally made.
So you see the standard path, right? FIR, investigation, police report. But there's a really critical moment right here, at cognizance. This is when a magistrate officially takes notice of the case. And at that exact point, they have to ask a really important question.
And to answer that, they basically look it up in the rule book, the legal schedule, to see which court is supposed to handle that specific crime. Seems simple, right? But what happens if the case suddenly gets a whole lot bigger than it looked at first? And that exact question brings us to our first special procedure. You can almost think of it like a legal level up. It's what happens when a case suddenly gets way more serious.
Now, what's really important to get here is that this isn't some kind of failure. It's not the system breaking down. It's actually the system working exactly as it's supposed to by escalating the case to a court that has the right power to handle it.
Exactly. So a magistrate can handle a theft, no problem. But murder? That's out of their league. So when this bombshell drops, they can't just pretend they didn't hear it. They have to commit the entire file, the theft, the murder, all of it, up to the Court of Session, which does have the power to try murder cases.
And this is where you really see the flexibility of the system. A case can get committed for two totally different reasons. On one hand, the law might say from day one, nope, this crime has to be tried by the Court of Session. That's mandatory. But on the other hand, a judge might be in the middle of a trial and just realize, you know what, this is way more complicated than I thought. For justice to be done, this needs a higher court. That second one is up to the judge's discretion.
So, when a judge is making that discretionary call, these are the kinds of things they're thinking about. Just how serious is this offense? Is there something about the crime itself that needs a higher court's perspective? Or is this a case that the public is really, really watching?
Okay, so that's what happens when a case is too big to even try. But what about a different kind of problem? What if the court is perfectly fine for the trial, but not powerful enough for the punishment?
Yeah, this is a whole different ballgame. Imagine a magistrate is trying a case. Let's say it's a pretty serious assault. They hear all the evidence, they find the person guilty. But during the trial, it became clear just how brutal this crime was. The magistrate thinks this deserves 5 years in prison. But there's a catch. The law says that this magistrate can only give a sentence of up to 3 years. Their hands are completely tied. And this is where the system has this really clever solution. It's called submission. The magistrate sends the case file up to a more senior judge, not for a whole new trial, but just for sentencing. It's a way to make sure the punishment can actually fit the crime, even if the judge who heard the case couldn't deliver it themselves.
So let's be super clear on the difference here. Committal is about sending a case up for a full trial. Submission is about sending a case up only for sentencing. One is about who can try the case, the other is about who can punish the person. Totally different. And this part is so important. The senior judge doesn't just rubber stamp the file. They have the power to do a deep dive. They can call witnesses back, ask for more evidence. They can do whatever they feel is necessary to make sure the conviction is sound before they pass any sentence. They can even order a whole new trial if they think something is wrong.
Okay, so we've talked about committal and submission. How does this all fit together? Well, these procedures are basically safety valves. They're there to make sure that at every single stage of a case, the court in charge has one of 3 very specific powers.
And this is really the main thing to remember. The whole system is designed around these 3 competencies. A court has to be able to legally start a case, be able to try the case, and be able to punish appropriately.
If at any point a court is missing one of those competencies for the case in front of it, that's when committal or submission kicks in to move it to a court that does have the power.
And that brings us all the way back to that puzzle we started with. Why does the law say higher courts can try any case? It's not redundant at all. It's the legal foundation that makes things like committal and submission possible. It's what builds that flexibility into the system so that no matter how a case changes or twists, it can always end up in the right hands.
And this system is designed to make sure the right court handles every case. But that raises a pretty big question, doesn't it? How do you balance this kind of flexibility, which is so important for justice, with the need for speed? It's a huge challenge, not just in India, but for legal systems everywhere. Definitely something to think about. Thanks so much for joining us.